So what is up, guys? Nick here, helping you to master your technology. Should you buy iPhone SE 2020 now? So in this video, I'm going to share with you what I think about it now. I did cover this phone earlier this year. I said the phone's ridiculous. If you watched that video, thumbs up to you. We talked about how ridiculously good it is for the price, mostly because of the software updates, the camera, the processor. But right now, we are seeing rumors that there's going to be another iPhone SE. And unfortunately, it looks like Apple might stick around with this classic build, but I wouldn't be surprised if maybe they bring a plus size of this. That would be nice, like the iPhone 8 Plus reincarnated as the SE, bigger version with the classic design. Let me know if you would like that. 1080p display. I don't know. I kind of would like to see Apple just go away from this design totally, 100%, but I don't know if they're going to do that. Let's talk about the body, the build design. 7.3 millimeters here. So right now, very thin. You got that classic thin iPhone 6 design here. And yeah, if you don't like classic iPhone, this is not for you whatsoever, but at least you have a very tiny camera bump and you have a very nice small footprint. If you just like a basic iPhone, you're gonna love this thing. And at the price point, it performs just like the more premium $1,000 iPhones with the A13 CPU and 3 gigabytes of RAM, but it's so thin because it has a pretty weak battery on here. I will say that if you want strong battery, this 1821 milliamp hour battery is not going to be for you. Talking about display quality though, you know, Retina display is on board here. This is not the liquid Retina you'll find on the XR or the iPhone 11. It's just a regular Retina IPS display, but it's pretty good. And I actually like it a little bit more than some of those, you know, devices like the 11 and 10R in terms of how sharp it looks, because it's on a smaller panel. So it's kind of harder to see pixels and things like that. Not that you can really see them on the 11 or 10R, but it just looks better when it's crunched down into a smaller display. I feel like as you go up in display, it's nicer to get more of a higher resolution panel, because then it looks a little bit sharper. But with this phone, it looks pretty good at that resolution, so I'm not super upset at all with this here. In addition to that, it is 4.7 inches, so it is the smallest iPhone display that you can buy on the market right here. Even though the iPhone 12 mini has a smaller body, this one right here definitely does have a pretty small overall display, but it is 16:9, so it has that nice aspect ratio where things look pretty wide. Even though it's smaller, it's not a narrow kind of feel. So right now, if you want to buy this display, you got to really appreciate the older style smartphone screens if you really want to pick this up right now, if you don't like all the new stuff. Because I mean, look at the bezels on here. They are pretty darn massive. Because I mean, look at the bezels. They are pretty massive right here on the iPhone SE. So if you want this in display, again, you're gonna have to be okay with that right now. Now, software and updates on this phone, they've been coming in just as frequently as you'll find on the other iPhones, and that's great. You know, Apple does keep their stuff updated for a long time. We know this. And if you were to buy this now, the SE still has so many years left of support. So that's a really good thing about this, that even though this phone, when it first came out, it was already an aged design. You don't buy this phone for a premium design. You buy this to get into the ecosystem and not for a lot of money. And you do get to get software updates for a long time. So if you're one of those people, you just want a very good priced iPhone and you want updates, get this phone. It's going to get 15 and it's going to run just fine on 15 as well, because it does have an A13, which is not that old of a CPU. It's one of the best processing technologies on the planet. So really good here in overall performance. Now, what I like about this camera on the iPhone SE 2020 is that the camera is a single lens setup. Now, you could say, well, what are you talking about, Nick? All the Android phones that compete with this, you know, they got multiple cameras. Why would I want a phone with a single camera? Well, ask yourself how much you take photos, because if you don't take a ton of photos, a single camera is very simple to use. Like, it's very easy to use. It's like the easiest type of camera you can use on a phone. You don't have to think about going into the wide angle, the telephoto, stuff like that. This camera is just easy. And if you like easy, simple phone, you're gonna love this camera, because it's just video, it's just photo. Kind of reminds me of an actual camera with a fixed lens where you don't have to like change the lenses out and stuff like that. You just pull it out and you shoot. That's kind of how this phone feels. And it gives you a 12 megapixel camera with the capabilities of shooting up to 4K 60. So that does give you a nice amount of range with the video. And of course, you can go in the more cinematic 4K 24. There's been people who have shot movies with an iPhone 8, and this camera is better than the iPhone 8's camera. So That's saying something right there. Now on the front camera, you do have a nice 7 megapixel camera on here. Now it doesn't match perfectly with the rear. If you want the best quality on the SE, you do have to go to the rear camera. And the video on the front tops out at 1080. You cannot go to a full 4K video on the front. So that's a little disappointing. However, keep in mind that there's a lot of phones out there with front-facing cameras that can do 4K, but their quality is still not better than what you see on this 7 megapixel camera. It's just the way Apple processes things and sets up the camera. Sometimes you get better results even if it doesn't have the highest spec. So very good overall results here still for the SE. All right, so let's talk about the audio on here. Nick here, helping you to master your technology. Should you? Now, I'm gonna say, just like the other iPhones, it has a very clear sound. By iPhone 12 now. But I will say that the dual speaker setup on here is not as loud as the iPhone 12, the iPhone 12 Pro, the 11 Pro. Those phones have louder speakers than this. You might be saying, Nick, you covered this phone. Yeah, but I'm talking about right now. These sound a little more tinny than those speakers. So keep in mind, you're not getting the best audio experience from this phone either. However, you are getting Bluetooth 5.0. So if you do get yourself, you know, some AirPods or anything like that, this phone will connect to those very quickly, just like the other devices out there. Now, I do want to cover battery life because this is an area of, you know, not the best for the iPhone SE 2020. This is really like yesteryear iPhones when the battery life wasn't super impressive for the devices where you would have to have a battery pack on them and stuff like that. The SE is just like those phones. It just doesn't have strong battery life. Actually, it has about the same battery life as an iPhone 7 and an iPhone 8 if you remember what those were like. That is to say, medium use will make it through a day. Heavy use, not making it a day with this phone. I was topping out around 3 to 4 hours screen time with this, so not impressive battery life for the SE, but it does have impressive standby. If you don't use it much, it's not going to drain much battery at all. That's due to optimizations of iOS with the hardware and software, how Apple, you know, sets this thing up. So I will say battery, steer clear of this one if you want a really good battery life. Even at this price point, you will find competing Android phones with much better battery life than this. And what about the fingerprint sensor? It is an area of the iPhone SE 2020 that I do think is nice. You know, having Touch ID, this is like one of the last iPhones you can buy right now at the Apple stores that has a Touch ID scanner. You know, the iPhone SE is the last one here, and I want to see it go in display. It still feels a little slower because you are using a physical button, but it's not slow by no means, and it's more accurate than some of those in-display fingerprint sensors, mostly because you don't have to rely on the display. You have it right there front and center, so it does work very flawlessly like you would expect. I just think sometimes, you know, the Face ID would be nice, but you know, you're not going to get it here on an SE model device. So we're at the conclusion of this video. The iPhone SE 2020 does come in black. I keep wiping this off because you can see the back gets smudgy. We should talk about that. The back of these iPhone SEs get really smudgy because they have this glossy, shiny back. And by the way, they don't say iPhone on the back anymore. This is specifically the product red version. It's my favorite color of the SE. But this one right here, black, white, red, it's a really beautiful, you know, classic throwback to iPhone. But if you don't like this older style, stay away from this phone. If you want something more modern with the more all screen, with the notch iPhone's Face ID, you're going to want to steer clear of this. Even if you think it might be good for you, if you already feel like you're edging towards those type, just stay away from this. It's going to feel super, you know, classic, older kind of feel here. But I think this makes for a great backup iPhone, a great first iPhone for people who are not paying that price to get into the more premium iPhone devices, or somebody who just has an iPhone, a love for these classic iPhones. It's great. Although I will say that it doesn't seem like Apple picked the right choice here with the SE. I think they should have did the older body, the 2016 body, stretched the screen a little bit. They kind of did that with the 12 mini, but not really. Like, I wish they would have kept that exact 4-inch design and just updated it, because that was, I think, a little more popular than this type of iPhone 8 reincarnation. Let me know your thoughts on the iPhone SE. Will you buy it here late 2020? Are you done with this phone? Are you like, I'm ready for the next one? That's so last year. This iPhone was just never great to me. Let me know how you feel about it down below in the comment section. If I had to do it again, I probably would buy it again. It makes for a great secondary iPhone, you know, for one-handed use and stuff like that. Subscribe if you haven't already. Thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Nick here, helping you to master your technology. I will catch you all in the very next episode, and peace.